Hello everyone, welcome back to IT Alchemy. Today we are tackling something super useful, that is installing Docker on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. We will be doing this using the online repository. So by the end of this video, you will have Docker up and running in no time. So let's dive right in. What are we going to learn in today's video? First, different methods of installing Docker on Linux. Installing Docker on Linux using the online repository. And finally, validating the Docker installation. Quickly go through the different methods of installing Docker. Install using the online Docker repository. This requires the server to have internet connectivity to the online repository. It's easy to install and upgrade, but most of the production servers are air-gapped nature. That means it doesn't have connectivity to the internet. So it's not used in most of the production areas. We need to add the Docker CE repo into the server and use the yum install command to install the necessary packages. The second method is installing Docker using the RPM packages. This is mostly used in production environment which is air-gapped in nature, where it has no access to the internet. It gives you more control on how to install and upgrade. We download the necessary Docker RPM packages and its dependencies onto a staging server or a workstation. We then use SCP or SFTP protocols using WinSCP, for example, to transfer the files from one host to the server where we intend to install Docker. The third method is using the Docker convenience script. This is mostly used in the development environment and is not recommended for the production one. However, you can customize it to suit your needs. You then download the convenience script from the Docker site and you can run as it to the server where we intend to install Docker. Before we get into the nitty-gritties, let's go through the prerequisites check. Make sure you have the root access or a user with sudo privileges because you're going to make some changes into the systems. You would need to have a compatible operating system. Can be RHEL 8 or RHEL 9. It could be a physical machine or a virtual machine or even a cloud instance. Whatever works best for you. Internet connectivity from the server. Since you're going to pull Docker from an online repository, you would need an internet connectivity. Let's log into a Linux server and perform the demo. Now we will check the system compatibility. We switch user to the root. Now we'll check with id command just to validate we are in the root. You execute uname-a to get the Linux kernel version. It also provides you the Red Hat Linux version which is installed. So you can see it's EL9, which would mean Enterprise Linux 9 on x86 64-bit. You could also run cat etc Red Hat release, which provides you the Red Hat release version, so which is 9.4. So hence we have confirmed the OS compatibility. Now we'll check the internet connectivity to google.com. Yeah, so here it works. So that means our server is having an internet access. We can also ping download.docker.com to check the connectivity to the online Docker repository. Because it's going to run containers, you should ensure that the server is having sufficient amount of CPU and memory along with the disk space to hold the containers. Step 2 is to remove any old version of Docker and its dependencies. We can use yum remove command to remove the older versions of Docker and its dependencies. Just remember, yum remove command will not delete the images, containers, volumes, and networks associated with the Docker container. Let's execute yum remove command for removing Docker, Docker clients, log rotate, Docker engine, Podman. Podman is a headless Docker container which comes as a part of RHEL. But you can see the other packages of Docker are not installed. However, Podman is installed there and it has some dependencies which is shown in red here. If we just say yes, it will uninstall Podman and its dependencies. So you can see it. So erasing, and after erasing, it is verifying. Finally, it gives you the packages which are removed. Now let's add Docker's official online repository to your system. This is where we will be downloading Docker from. Adding this repo is important because it ensures you are getting Docker straight from the source. This way you will have access to the latest updates, security patches directly from Docker. We need to install the yum utils package. This package will provide you the yum config manager utility, which will allow you to add the repository onto the servers. This command may fail if the server is not registered to Red Hat. So we need to register and automatically subscribe with the credentials of Red Hat. If you don't already have these credentials, you can create one. The subscription manager register command will add your servers to the RHN network. Once the yum util package is installed, we need to run yum config manager add repository and the download docker.com repo to add the Docker repository onto the server. Let's execute those commands. Let's try to install yum util packages. Oh, it fails. As I mentioned, it says the system is not registered with an entitlement server to register, so which we had seen previously. I have registered my server using the subscription manager, and now I am rerunning the installation of yum util packages. As you can see, now it has detected this package and it shows how much is the size of the package. Downloading the package. Then it's installing, and then finally it shows you the package that it has been installed. Before we add the Docker repository, let's check what are the existing repositories on our server. We can see rel 9 AppStream repo as well as rel 9 base OS repo. These are Red Hat 9 repositories. Now let's add the Docker repo. For that, we execute the yum config manager command with the add repo switch and the URL of the Docker CE repository, which is download.docker.com/linux/rhel/docker CE repo. It shows that it's adding that repo from that location. Once that is done, we again run yum repo list to see whether it has been added properly. Docker CE table is added, which was not there before. With this, we add the Docker online repository, which we can download the Docker packages and its dependencies. Now with the repository setup, the next step is how to install Docker. We are going with Docker CE, that is the community edition, perfect for development and small scale projects. We need to get the available versions of Docker CE and Docker CE CLI in the Docker repository. So we run yum list command. Once we have identified the versions which we need to install, we need to run yum install command with the respective versions to install that specific version of Docker CE. If we don't specify a version number, it will download install the latest version available in the Docker repository. Now let's go back to the server and execute those commands. First, we will run yum list docker CE. It will give you the list of available versions in the repository. The latest version is 27.1.2-1.el9. And from which repository it is there? It is Docker CE stable in the last column. So you can see various versions available. So I'm going to go with 1.1.1. Now let's run yum install Docker CE with the version numbers, Docker CE CLI, container.io, and buildx and other packages. Okay, so here it failed, unable to find the match for Docker CE CLI 3.27 1.1.1, which would mean for Docker CE CLI version is wrong, which I mentioned in the command. So let's rerun the yum list command for Docker CE CLI to find the available versions. Okay, so we have run yum list Docker CE CLI. This would give me the list of available versions in the repository. Here you can see the corresponding versions for Docker CE 27.1.1. The CE CLI version would be Docker CE CLI -1.27.1.1.1. So I have corrected the version for Docker CE CLI and executed the yum install commands with the Docker and its necessary packages. We can see that the yum install command has detected the necessary packages from the repository. We can also cross-verify the versions, the right repository, which is Docker CE stable. It will ask you whether you want to download and install the packages. Select yes. It has also detected one of the dependencies for CE rootless extra. As you can see, it's downloading the packages. Okay, it has downloaded Docker build, Docker C, CLI, containerd, compose. It will ask you to import key, which we say yes. So the key is imported successfully. Now it's installing the necessary packages. After the install, you can see that it is verifying the package. Once the verification is done, it will give the list of packages which are installed successfully. So here we can see all the necessary packages which we had given have been successfully installed. Here containerd, Docker C, Docker C, CLI, BuildX, Docker Compose, they are all installed now. Now with that we have successfully installed Docker, but we still need to validate whether the installation has been successful. Okay, let's run docker ---- version. Oh, it gives me the version as 27.1.1. Let's run docker system info. Here we see that the version is 27.1.1. It also gives the version of Docker BuildX and Docker Compose. But there's one error. It says your Docker instance is not running. So it gives you very less information. So let's start the Docker using systemctl start Docker. Now if you run docker system info, it gives you a lot of information about the Docker instance. Along with the versions of Docker, Docker BuildX, Docker Compose, it also provides you the containers, how many containers were running, stopped, how many are paused, how many images are there, along with the storage drivers and many other attributes like operating system, the kernel version, how many CPUs are there, what is the total memory, the host name, and importantly the root directory, that is var lib docker. Step 6 is to validate stop and start of Docker services. This is to ensure that a Docker can start and stop successfully without any error. To manage the Docker services, we use systemctl commands with attributes like stop, start, status, enable. Now let's switch back to the putty session. So we have run systemctl stop Docker to stop the Docker services. To validate whether it has stopped successfully, we run systemctl status Docker. It shows the status is inactive with the timestamp. Also, it shows the few lines of logs before the stopping. As you can see the last line, stop Docker application container engine. Okay, let's rerun the status again. Now we will start the services. Now we run systemctl start Docker. We can check it using ps-ef pipegrep docker. It says docker d is running. We will also run systemctl status docker. Now it shows that system is active and it's in running state. With that, we have validated the stop start of Docker services. In most of the production servers, we would not want the Docker services to be managed using a root. Docker binds to a unit socket, hence the root owns it. a non-root user will not be able to manage and control by default. We need to create a group called Docker and add the non-root user to it. To test this, we can launch a new PuTTY terminal and execute few Docker commands to validate whether we are able to install containers, stop start containers as a non-root. Now let's switch to a PuTTY terminal and execute group add Docker. So here you can see Docker was already added. Now let's add the user Santosh to the group Docker and execute new group command to rerun and refresh the group attributes. Also, when I run ID, it shows that the root also is part of the Docker group. We will quickly check whether Docker is running. Oh, it's in the active running state. Let's open a new terminal with the user Santosh and log in with the credentials. Here you can see that Santosh is a part of the Docker group. To make sure everything is working smoothly, let's run a quick test. Docker provides a hello world image specifically for this. It's like a quick check to see if everything is in order. Run this command. Docker run hello world. When you run this command, it's unable to find the image in locally. It downloads the hello world image. If you see a message that says hello from Docker, that's a sign that everything is working perfectly. Your Docker installation is now fully functional and is ready to start exploring containers. Now we will also check whether we have these images available locally. As you can see, hello world latest, and it is downloaded. Now that the Docker is up and running, you can start building and running containers, experimenting with Docker Compose, or even diving into Kubernetes for orchestration. There are a lot of cool stuff you can do with Docker, so the adventure just begins. And that's it. You have successfully installed Docker on Red Hat Enterprise Linux using an online repository. If you have found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out any of the future tutorials. Thank you for tuning into IT Alchemy. See you next time.